if you leave, I'm going to kill your family. Yeah. So I'm going to kill you. And something like that.
Somebody in a white van coming to snatch you and cover your head and run off with you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the HT Podcast. I'm your host, Jazmine, and this is your safe space to learn, to grow, to be empowered and equipped with understanding the realities of human trafficking so that you can protect yourself.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the HT Advocates Podcast. I'm your host, Jazmine, and this is your safe space to learn, grow, be equipped and empowered with human trafficking knowledge so that you can understand the realities of trafficking and protect you and your loved ones. Well, today I have two amazing, incredible women, Amy and Vanessa, and these are experts who show up every single day to confront this issue head on. They have compassion, skill, and purpose, and I'm just so excited that both of you guys are joining me. First, we have Amy Schuman. She is the Upcare. She brings a powerful background as a movement therapist, blending creative and expressive arts to support individuals who have experienced trauma. Her passion is helping survivors reconnect with their bodies, find safety, and access tools of self-care, grounding, and joy. Well, thank you, Amy, for joining us.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
And then we have Vanessa. She is a licensed professional counselor, a woman of God, the founder of Smile Warrior Counseling, Consulting, and Therapeutic Services, inspiring individuals to find their inner warrior and reclaim their lost smile. Her work blends faith, creativity, compassion to support youth, families, underserved communities on their journey towards safety and intentional living. And then another thing about Vanessa, I actually did some background before to pronounce your last name because I'm so not good at, I don't even know how Dad called me. So host the podcast, y'all. The way I pronunciate names and words, just bear with me. I'm like Moses, okay? God, he called me to it. Honestly, when he called me to the podcast, I was like, I need you to burn a bush because I need to know. This is what you're calling me to. So I'm sitting here with my husband. I'm like, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. And I feel so bad to ask her because I know Vanessa. I love Vanessa. And that's just so embarrassing. So I'm looking it up and it showed that your last name means warrior. Mm-hmm. And to know that you're a first generation Haitian American and born and raised in New York, and you have a heart for community service and giving back to the community. You even moved to Georgia for the master's degree and program. So just combining your love for people and art with your passion for healing. So if you could pronounce your last name for me so I can get it right. And then if you just even want to talk about the background of your last name too.
Yeah, my last name is Elie. A lot of people have butchered my name. I definitely will be one of those people. If I do choose to go back for another degree, I will wait until they say it properly because it's a thing. And yeah, I have my mother's last name. It's absolutely beautiful. Galia means warrior. And I definitely say that encompasses exactly who I am. I'm so grateful for my family. They came from Haiti, and my mom and father, they came to New York, little English, and they created business, and moved into like a nice house and created a great foundation for me to be able to be where I am now. So I'm grateful. I love people, love my country. I'm just grateful.
Love it. Yes.
Thank you so much.
And then I even want to mention that both of you women, you guys are, for one, amazing. And I appreciate all the work you guys do for the fight of human trafficking. But they both have experience working with youth survivors and victims of human trafficking. So they understand, what the real realities of human trafficking is. And so when I was thinking of this podcast, I was like, the biggest issue with human trafficking right now is that the media portrays human trafficking one way, and that's just not the reality. So who better to bring on the show someone who actually sees the realities of human trafficking every day. And both of these ladies are also both on the Georgia Human Trafficking Task Force. So they're definitely working with other organizations and professionals to stop human trafficking. So I will start with you, Amy. Do you just want to talk about how you got into human trafficking prevention and joined the fight against human trafficking?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, first of all. My background really is finding my own healing work through the arts. So since I was young, so it was so natural for me to study recreational therapy at undergraduate school, to study movement therapy in graduate school. Though I was my first client, I have a history of abuse and violation. So it, you know, the ground was being formed a very long time ago for me to step into this arena. I learned about this issue probably 15 plus years ago about what was happening in the United States. I saw films, I heard speakers talking about this issue. I lived in the Bay Area, and at that time, the Bay Area was considered one of the highest density areas in California in the country for commercially sexually exploited youth.
My God.
So I saw agencies popping up that were serving this population, and I thought, what can I do to help? What is my role in this? I have a background in recreational therapy. I have a background in movement therapy. The arts have been a way that I've done my own healing. So I started reaching out to agencies who were serving this population, and I said, this is what I do. How can I be of service? And so there was so much education that needed to happen around using trauma to rewire the nervous system for pleasantries instead of the dread and the horrors that trauma delivered to their bodies and their minds and their spirits. And so most of my work in the beginning was educating people. I still have to do it, educating people about the value of arts. I mean, you just think about something as simple as going for a walk in the woods, a hike in the woods, and how refreshed you could feel afterwards, right? Just something simple. It's not complicated. It's retraining your body to find what is exciting and moves you into something more pleasant, right? And it starts to trump the pain of what you've experienced. So
It's amazing just to know how powerful the brain is, like how it can hide trauma. Could you go into survivor mode? But just so much I'm learning from you. I even told you, I said I need to hire you for a Women's Day, and then so that we can literally start doing a lot of that creative expression and movement because there's so and shit. Yes, before we even started, she said, "Let's." And so just learning so much from you and from you too, Vanessa, about trauma and about how the brain works and how the creative and therapy can definitely be that solution, for human traffic victims and for a lot of us, because a lot of adults are now still functioning through trauma from childhood, right? So,
yeah, and if I can say that our systems are made to be sort of plastic molding where we can be reshaped, and we forget about that and we get stuck in patterns. And one of my board members from Arm of Care is a hospice nurse, and she would say she would work with people at the end of their life, and she would say how much trauma she saw embedded in their nervous system still because of they hadn't find their spot to their places, their safe places for healing and wholeness. And so that's why she wanted to be on the board. So
that's amazing just to know like how that all endures.
Yes.
I completely agree with that. Now, I'm gonna ask you the same thing. How did you get involved with human trafficking and joining the fight?
I fell into human trafficking, thank God, honestly. So I have a similar background, trauma. I feel like a lot of individuals in the field have like a close connection. Right. So I have this history of sexual abuse as well. And as Yeah, it's part of like my story, but it's a beautiful part of my story. And I think that's the beauty of working through your trauma, right? A lot of people in the field, you have to also take the medicine,
Yep.
right? You don't want to just dish it out and not actually do the work yourself. Absolutely. That's how harm comes about, right? So I was blessed when I was younger. I had individuals. You actually somewhat remind me of the counselor that I work with, and I love that. I had a great counselor when I was younger, and I found myself in a space where I wanted to touch others and work with others. And that was beautiful. So it started from like high school, working with other individuals. And then I found that some people, even like people that were bullying me, honestly, had similar traumas. And it was like, oh, like you're hurt. We're just all walking around in this world hurt. And so I started doing the work there. I knew I wanted to go into counseling. And then I worked with one institution where I found that a lot of the individuals there were suffering with the similar traumas.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then from there, I've always worked with children. Now I work with adults, but I've started working with children. And a lot of my adolescents had a similar story.
Yeah.
And then I worked with one other institution where they had sexual assault, just one building solely for those individuals. And that grew. And so I had an opportunity to work solely with trafficking. And I was like, absolutely, absolutely, especially coming from the hospital setting where I'm doing constant reports on a regular basis, like five, just from one little shift, 5 reports for each individual that was coming into the adolescent unit. And so when I had the opportunity to work closer and to gain more insight, that was like, absolutely ran to it. And then I was able to just learn more about force, fraud, coercion, and that just set everything off for me. So
I'm just so excited to have you on the plates and just all that you're doing in the community. I do want to ask about like the hospitals. Did you, with knowing what you know now about human trafficking, did you see any a lot of signs of the youth that were coming in the hospital being victims of trafficking?
that's a really great question.
I didn't.
No, I love that. That's a great question. In the hospital, I would say that I saw a lot of individuals that were at risk. I think that's what I noticed the most in the hospital. Individuals that were at risk, families that did not have as much insight that I wished. And also like I know we're gonna like talk more about it later, but also it kind of highlighted that traffickers don't look the way, because I think I was also one of those individuals where, my mom was a real big taken person. Anytime I want to go anywhere, she's like, you cannot be taken. So it's like seeing that.
It's good.
And I was one of those individuals that I just had that Hollywood perception, until I was, thank you God, placed in a space where I started to get more insight. So now looking back, I think there was so much more. I think that's also a training that would be really beneficial within hospital settings. So that way individuals have more insight, because even being in the field, there's so many different aspects to it. And I think that would be beneficial for sure.
That's so true because, especially with a lot of the work I do, and even with you guys too. Well, I know you guys are on the prevention side, and then also once human traffic victims, are trying to go through that process and healing. But I'm like strictly more on prevention. And then if I do have a human traffic, victim that I'm aware of, then I'm praying and I'm bringing them to you guys and your amazing resources you have. But when we think about it, at risk youth, are all over, whether it's in the hospital, it's in the schools, the group homes, even the churches, we have to talk about that all over. And so if the people that are called to steward, over whether it's the hospital patients or the students at school, if they aren't aware of what human trafficking is, then that's where we have that big gap, right, of where we could have rescued or even protected these youth before they even got in those situations. So I say let's even just jump. I know you started talking about the myths and stuff. Let's jump into that. Let's talk about.
Can I say a little something about not even just the awareness of human trafficking, Jasmine, and Vanessa, but the awareness of trauma.
Oh,
Like seeing the signs of trauma in my family or my children or my brother or sister, just seeing the signs and being able to know in your own sense how to address it, right? Vanessa and I and you are all examples of people who we've noticed our own trauma and we've addressed it, and that actually qualifies us to enter those worlds and speak into it. And I also worked at a hospital, in a psych hospital.
Yeah.
And if you unravel mental illness and you start to get to like some of the trauma, right? And you see it through movement, and you see people starting to unravel. And I remember doing programs with what was considered, like the worst psych patients in the hospital, and then watching them calm down after just using their body or doing a creative art piece. Like somehow their minds went back, sort of what I call online.
We even have to do a whole nother. I'm definitely bringing y'all back. When I do bring y'all back, we're literally gonna get up and do the movement.
Let's do it.
Can you also do some art pieces?
Let's do it.
Something like
That was my favorite part. Psychiatric hospital, working with, again, adolescents, because it's something beautiful, because talk therapy is great. However, there are times where that may be really difficult. That's why they have things such as EMDR, right? And other movement therapy. And I feel like that's a beautiful part. I remember working with this child who did not speak to anybody within a hospital setting. And I remember doing this art group, and the way he drew, we did like a lighthouse exercise, right? So essentially you're just picturing the lighthouse, you're in a boat, and you're seeing how far you are from the lighthouse, which would essentially be safety.
Okay.
And I never forget, he drew himself in the water and his family on the boat and piranhas around him, and he was able to, he was able to express himself and give us insight that we needed, so that way we can take further steps to get him to safety. Wow. So I love that you mentioned that, because it's so powerful. It's more than just speaking sometimes.
Well, cognition is interesting. I'm sorry, I'm going to go on this little tangent.
No, this is good, because I'm learning.
Yeah. So cognition is interesting. So I can't talk about what I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're asking me to talk about something that I can't access, I'm going to start to make things up or just say things maybe to please you or just to try to answer the question as best as I can. Mm-hmm. But if I give you a blank sheet of paper, or if I give you an image, then I start to tell my story. So if I ask you, how are you doing? You're not going to say, well, I feel like there's piranhas all around the boat. They're going to say that my family's in. You're going to like, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and I'm going to share another story briefly where we did a full body map. So, a whole team of women lay on the floor. They draw the outline of their bodies, and then they draw it inside with really very little direction. What does it feel like inside your body? And one woman just colored the whole thing black. And then right across her pelvis, she wrote violated. I am still in touch with her still today. This was probably like 10 or 13 years ago. I can't remember. But so she writes violated. And I said, baby, if I asked you how you're doing, you wouldn't say, I feel violated. You'd say, I'm fine, Amy, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. But here's this place to be able to say, this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
In a safe space. So
it's the power.
And then knowing this, that's because I didn't know like how powerful or into you guys were speaking. We have to get art back in the schools. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think when you get in middle school or high school is optional. And if we're not, that's a form of therapy for the children, because even I know this podcast is about human trafficking, but human trafficking is the result of the issue.
It is.
Because of someone's trauma, they are at risk to become a victim. Because of someone's trauma, they become a trafficker.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we really deal with that, the main issue there, you know, with this information and educating individuals about, dealing with the trauma and understanding the signs. That and I know this is even off guard, but I just watched the P. Diddy Netflix doc. Yeah, I just week. And that was, that was grooming in its fullest. That was, and the reason why Hollywood or anyone watching that couldn't look at that as the end a situation of trafficking is because Hollywood has pretty much, I mean, yeah, there is conceptions about what human trafficking really is, when in reality, majority, of human traffic victims, youth and adults, they're not just being snatched off the street like the movie Taken. They're being groomed, they're being pretty much built, that traffickers build a trust. So I want to talk to you guys about that. Like, what do you guys feel like are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to how Hollywood portrays trafficking versus the reality as what how you guys are really seeing, especially with the youth too?
Yeah. I think the biggest myth is that it's somebody in a white van, and I'm from New York, so it always talk about that, right? Somebody in a white van coming to snatch you and cover your head and run off with you. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, right? I don't want that to be portrayed either. I'm not saying that can't happen or it doesn't happen. However, think about like reality, people go towards people that are kind and that are inviting, especially with children. It's somebody that you trust, it's somebody that builds trust, that makes you feel safe, you know and I think that's a big misconception. Hollywood paints this picture, such as those movies, where people have this idea of what it looks like. So yes, force is a part of it, but then there's also that fraud, right? Like the lies that are portrayed, the coercion that comes, you know, the grooming. Oh, I've noticed like you've been walking around in these shoes. Like, let me buy you these. Are you hungry? Let me take you out to get some food. Let me bring you some food. How's your mom doing today? Right? The people that make you feel comfortable to let your guard down, the people that even grow up in the homes with you,
It's so true. It's so good for us to even touch on that because, let's just use a scenario of a situation I know, you're talking about a 14-year-old girl who maybe, her family loves her, but they're maybe not really tuned in. She's not really fitting in school. She's grown up and not, she's not able to buy herself the things that, the other students have. And maybe that's part of the reason, that she feels, insecure at school. And then you have someone that you meet online who is telling you you're beautiful. And we all want to be, even as adults, we all want to feel seen and loved and know that someone cares about us. And it doesn't necessarily mean that person's parents or guardians don't love them, but God has made us to want to have feelings of love and someone admiring you. So that's where that gap is. So that trafficker comes in telling you you're beautiful. Okay, so that's open up that gateway. And like you said, now, oh, you don't have no shoes? Yeah. Wait, what's the new shoes now? The Adidas, there's somebody, I don't know, child. What's so the new Uggs. First off, Uggs was popping when I was growing up, okay? And I was one of the first ones to have a pair. I know that's right. I never forget because everybody was clowning me in school. They were like, what is those ugly things? I was like, they're called Uggs. And remember when Crocs first came out, nobody wanted to wear them, and now it's popping. But yeah, so, and then, the guy buys you that, or like you said, he's taking you out to eat. Well, now you're opening yourself to this perpetrator, which your family isn't aware of, whether it's online or someone you met in the mall or something of that sort. And if we watch, and I hate to keep talking about this documentary, but I just watched it last night. Okay. And that's what P. Diddy did. He literally basically was dangling a carrot to these people like, hey, you want to become a big, I mean, even if you think about Atlanta, we're the hub for the music industry, we're the hub for movies, we're the hub for modeling and all of that. So it's not too far-fetched that someone would jump in your DM, especially if you have any type of talent and you are, nice looking, and say, hey, I got this opportunity for you, because that is how traffickers move. But so sorry, Amy, I didn't know if you wanted to
I
add.
just wanted to add, like, what I kind of sense from both of you is the sort of like the undercurrent of that is if I want to get something from you, I'm going to try to figure out what you don't have. Like where can I manipulate you? Where can I make a promise to you of a place in you that's insecure? And I can't, perpetrators are from every walk of life.
Yeah.
And people learn to manipulate to get what they want. We've all manipulated people along the way until we've been getting, until our, moral compass gets a hold of us and we're like, okay, that ain't right. The way, the degree at which we're manipulating people. And so, the selfishness of the nature of a human being to manipulate another human being to get something that they want from them, to satisfy their own needs for power, attention. They're very wounded people. Wounded people wound people. We know that. But for me, that seems like
No.
the myth of Hollywood is that we think all those people they got it together, they're on screen, they're famous, they're singing, they're in shows, whatever they're doing, but they also have needs.
Yeah. And resolve wounds.
Yeah.
And that goes back to that trauma piece where when we're seeing these traffickers, we're seeing victims being lured in. The common factor is trauma, unhealed trauma.
Yes. Good boy.
And even to go deeper, like, how do you guys feel like Hollywood's portrayal and the way they show human trafficking affects healing for like the victims, even like the youth victims you work with? Like, what could almost, because in their opinion, they could feel like, well, I'm not really a victim of trafficking.
Yeah.
I wasn't kidnapped.
The normalization.
So does that affect how they're being healed, when you guys are working with those youth?
Yeah, it's a great question. Answer.
Yeah. I feel like, well, I want you to go. You could start off.
Yeah. I feel like the question is really what is the underlying motive of, I'm still back at the underlying motive. Even a non-P. Diddy case, it's hard for someone who's been trafficked to identify that they've been trafficked. When you've been so manipulated and you're in the public eye and people know you in Hollywood. I'm not going to name names of the people that P. Diddy abused and violated, but those people are in the public eye. The shame that comes along with that, to actually verbalize and say, this person who bought me new shoes and took care of me and gave me my start in the Hollywood industry and came to my shows and sponsored my record, abused me and violated me and made me feel like they were the only person I could go to for help. So there's the shame of admitting, especially for boys and men, admitting what happened. And I have to applaud the people who come forward and speak up. Other people of power try to hide it for them because to expose them would expose the person would expose themselves.
And now you got to deal with that trauma.
And now you got to deal with that trauma. So
yeah, I feel like along with the shame, the blame, and the guilt, right? Because they all come along. I feel that with what you're saying with like Hollywood and how it portrays things, people, we're not going to say that everybody's sitting down looking at the news, right? Or that people are looking into different information as it pertains to trauma and trafficking. I think because Hollywood paints this picture of like, oh, well, I snatched off the street, right? And that's what means I've been trafficked. And they don't know about the things that we're speaking about, right? The force, fraud, and coercion. They find themselves in spaces where they feel that and they're like, oh, well, that's not me. Like, oh, well, I didn't have this experience. Category. Yeah, like, oh, well, nobody snatched me off the street. So although I'm dealing with this in my home or within my school and community, that I don't fit in that, because I feel like that's a big thing with trauma too. Like mine was, a lot of people minimize, mine wasn't that bad.
It looks different than yours. My manifestation of it looks different than yours.
Like I wasn't trapped in the basement. He loves me. Right. And so how many victims, you can talk about youth or older, are you guys seeing that while they're going through therapy with you, that they don't think they're victims of trafficking? Countless. Like they're just countless. And they probably still have, a love for their trafficker.
Yeah. I so definitely feel that way. In the space that I was working within recently, it's solely towards trafficking, and at-risk youth. And a lot of my clients, my first question to them is like, hey, like, what brings you here? And a lot of them, especially if they're within DFAC system, Department of Family Children Services, or CPS, Child Protective Services in other states, it's a thing of like, well, my case manager just brought me here, but I don't really belong here. And it's like, well, do you know what this place is? And they're like, no. And then we go into the education piece, because that's so important. And I love that you're constantly an educator. I think that's a big part of any field that you're in. You have to educate.
Yeah.
And a big thing is the adolescents, even the adults. I work with adults in private practice, where I have adults and they're like, well, this is my life and this is what I was experiencing. And then I have to sit there and tell them, like, you're identifying or describing what trafficking looks like.
First step. So the fact that you're tuned in and you listen, and hopefully to the whole thing or a part, give yourself a round of applause. That is the first step. But the second step is action. So that means share this information with someone. There's a number below. If you or someone you may know may think that they're becoming a victim of human trafficking, but share this episode. Start these conversations with your friends, your loved ones. Take a lot of their actions, whether it's, doing expressive and therapy and arts, really just being mindful when you're communicating. Somebody may need your protection. You never know who you come across that might need this information you learned today. So thank you, Amy. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for tuning in to HD Advocates. Until next time, stay aware, stay empowered, and stay advocating. Thank you.
Thanks, yes.